Hello everybody, and welcome to another update on the COVID-19 pandemic that we have across the world. I'm Dr. Schalk from Dr. Luke on Call, and today I've got a very interesting guest. I'm speaking to Dr. INÉZ Rossouw. She's a virologist, and for those of you who don't know what that is, we're going to find out everything about the detective work that they do to pick up the villains that are running around in our world. INÉZ, welcome to the discussion today.
Good afternoon, Schalk. Thank you for the invitation, and good afternoon to the viewers. Yes, we are indeed detectives. If you think about an infectious agent invading us, it is like a crime scene. Think about the damage that it can do to our bodies. And we, as pathologists in a laboratory, try to detect those villains, in this case COVID-19 or the SARS coronavirus 2, and there are different ways that we can do it.
Well, that sounds really interesting. So if you say different ways, how do you actually see that the villain is there? What are the different ways?
Well, it depends on the size of the villain. I mean, if it's a burglar in your house, you're going to see it with your eyes. If it's a bacterium, you might see it with a light microscope. If it's a virus, it's a different story. You can't see it with a magnifying glass. You can't see it with a light microscope. We can see it with electron microscopes. We use an electron beam to look for the virus in the sample. But we don't have many electron microscopes in South Africa, so we can't actually use it for diagnostic purposes in many patients. But there was another tool developed called a PCR. It's a molecular test. And the reason why we say molecular is because that test moves on the terrain of molecules. We look for specific molecules that can identify this specific villain. One of the molecules that can identify it specifically is the genetic material. Viruses are organisms that can use DNA as well as RNA as their genetic material. And SARS coronavirus 2 uses RNA. So when we get a sample from a patient, we extract the RNA from that sample, and then we try to see, can we detect the genetic material? But sometimes there are so few molecules, and if you think about the size of the virus, it is so tiny that we need to amplify it. And that's what the PCR does.
Okay, if you say it's tiny, give me an example. How would the viewers know how small this villain is?
Viruses are measured in terms of nanometers, but a more visual way of imagining it is put yourself next to the highest point on Earth. That would be Mount Everest. That is more than 8,000 meters that it reaches at its top. Put a human next to that huge structure and you will have a virus against a flea, a similar comparison. So a virus is extremely small. And then we take the genetic material out of that tiny bit of material and try to detect that. And the PCR helps us to do that.
Okay, so as I understand what the PCR does, in a few cycles, you can get billions of these organisms or RNA material. Is that correct?
Absolutely. One molecule will give you a billion after 30 cycles. One molecule. So if you put in thousands of molecules, you'll sit with a massive amount of molecules that you can detect. And then you will know, yes, it is there, or no, it's not there.
Okay, so the contrary to this is that we're not looking for the villain, but we're now looking at the victim and what is the victim's reaction. It's almost now the villain has disappeared, only the fingerprints are left in the house, and you're now looking for the fingerprints, but it doesn't. It's not as accurate. You don't know exactly when it was there. So when you look for the victim, what is it? Is it the antibodies?
Well, if you go and have a look at the video that you made, your amazing immune system, you will see that that is exactly what happens when somebody is infected. antibodies are made. So while the villain is present, the body already starts making these antibodies, but they might be at such a low level that we can't detect them. It also takes a while before they start being made. And that is why in the beginning of the infection, we cannot use antibodies to make the diagnosis as accurately as we can use the PCR, which is looking for the virus itself. Initially, IgM is made, and IgM has also a little bit of a drawback in the sense that it can cross-react with other viruses. Later on, the IgM, or the cell that makes the IgM, starts making IgG. That only starts at about 7 to 14 days after the initial infection, and even up to 21 days. So when we detect antibodies, it actually implies that the villain is most probably not there anymore. We can only see the reaction of our own bodies towards the presence of the villain a while ago. But it will confirm if you were exposed, if you were infected, and that might also be helpful.
Okay, so to explain it a bit, the IgG, they are the antibodies that are going to stay on for longer and could be also the ones that you have to make you immune against the virus in future for next winter season. So we need the IgG eventually to develop to be giving us immunity.
Absolutely right. IgG is the molecule that helps us stay immune against reinfections. But in the case of the coronavirus, we don't know for how long the IgG will protect us. Research was done in macaque apes, in a few of them, and they were protected for about 28 days. So it seems as if it is a bit longer. They were not followed up for longer than that. Experts think that the IgG against the coronavirus might last for a year or two, and then it will wane again. So at this stage, we are still in a very early stage. We don't know yet exactly whether our immune response will protect us permanently.
Okay. Well, at least it's a good thing that we know we have an immune response. If you maybe get a smaller exposure later on, it will boost your antibodies again. All those things that plays a part. But yeah, all of this in a way keeps our leadership in the dark a little bit, and I think we have to be sensitive for the decisions they have to make with very little factual information, because we don't know this virus and they've got to make big decisions, economic decisions. So not an easy job.
I would not want to be in their shoes at this stage. In an outbreak situation, information is sparse. We don't know exactly what's going on. We have to make huge decisions based on a little bit of information. But what we do see at this stage is that it seems as if the case fatality rate is not as high as was initially predicted. That is very good news, and I do hope it pans out to be true. And the reason why the case fatality rate is a marker which we don't have the exact handle on yet is because we do not test everybody. It is influenced by the number of infected people, and because we don't know how many are infected, we have to make the best prediction we can on incomplete information.
As we all know, people are talking about rapid tests and these little kits that you can maybe buy at the pharmacy one day, or your doctor can do a test. And they, if we can get more testing done, our accuracy of how lethal the villain is will probably improve. But those tests aren't approved yet, as far as I know. Is that correct?
Yes, it is not recommended by the WHO or our own NICD or the National Pathology Group, and it's also not registered in South Africa yet. And the reason is because we are in the dark regarding antibodies and the response and the protection that it gives, and these tests makes use of that. The sensitivity of these tests, the specificity, meaning the sensitivity means if you are infected, Does it pick up that you are infected? That is fairly low. And it means that you can test negative while you are indeed infected, and then you are a threat to the people around you. So therefore, it's not accepted at this stage. There are some good, promising information coming out, but a lot of research still has to be done.
Wonderful. That's great to know. Yeah, well, I think the good news of the day and the message of the day from the laboratory side and from the virology side is that the villain looks like it's not as bad, and our immune systems, as we see in, even that video with the amazing immune system, is very well equipped to deal with this virus. We need to just make sure we rest and have our nice, diets, fruit and veg, and do the right thing. Wear the masks. Don't, put all the people at risk. You agree with most of those things?
Absolutely. Continue doing that. We hope that information will grant the authorities the leeway to lift the lockdown, and something like a rapid test that is reliable will help them to do that. So at this stage, we can't use it, but we hope that it will feature in the future.
Dr. INÉZ Rossouw, thank you very much for talking to us today. It's been very insightful. And yeah, thank you for your time, also in a busy schedule.
Thank you very much, and keep well.
That was Dr. INÉZ Rossouw, virologist, that spoke to us about what happens behind the closed doors of a laboratory and how difficult it is for them to find this villain that is so tiny and spreads so quickly. But at least we know that it's not as virulent and that the mortality rate looks to be a lot lower than what we thought. It's still important to protect our elderly and our immune compromised people, so do the right thing, wash your hands, wear your mask if you're in public, and remember, stay healthy, stay home, and stay safe.